Hello, so I'm about to walk you through how I went about choosing my particular Aeron setup. As you probably know, there is no official headrest available for the Aeron, but there are a number of aftermarket headrests that you can add. The one on the left is the Engineered Now 3 model. The one in the center here is the Engineered Now 4 model, which they describe as being better for tall people. And this one on the right is the Atlas. So the first headrest I actually tried was the Engineered Now 3 model. This seems to be one of the most commonly bought models. There's a lot of people selling it on Amazon. It has a number of adjustments. It has this lever here which locks this U piece into place. It has these bars which can slide the headrest up and down. And it's a nice looking headrest. It's got the mesh style that's similar to the Aeron. I will note that there are a couple things that are not perfect matches. So if you look closely here at the color, it might be not quite perfect in this particular light, but it is not a perfect match. It's a very nice match. No one would really notice, but I noticed, and it stands out compared to the other option that this is not a perfect match. The other thing is that the mesh material is also not a perfect match. So I have the True Black branded finish for the Aeron mesh, and this is the True Black finish for the headrest, and they are not a perfect match. The weave on the headrest appears just a little bit looser, and it is noticeable. It is something that anyone with a keen eye would notice the difference, and it does make it seem like pretty obvious that it's not an official Aeron part, at least to discerning eyes. Moving on to the Engineered Now 4 model, this is extremely similar to the 3 model, except just a little bit bigger. According to Engineered Now, it is 20% bigger. For me, I really decided I wanted to try this because of the additional height. One of the things they don't talk about, which also is significant, I think, is that the fabric is more taut straight across. So looking just a little bit more closely at the Atlas, there's a couple things that really stood out to me. One is that unlike the other models, it's got a nice padded plush pillow. And it's very smooth. It feels like, kind of reminds me of the pillows on the Leap chairs. It's got a really nice fabric that's slippery. Nothing really will catch on it. I find that my hair won't catch on it, which is one of the complaints that folks have about the other headrest if you read reviews. Another thing I really thought was cool about this headrest is that the color of the metal is dead on perfect match for the Aeron. I believe, looking at the website, they talk about using some of the same suppliers. There are only a couple of adjustments on this, but I found them to be very, very logical. This adjustment here is to adjust the height, which I'll show you on the chair in just a second. This adjustment here is to adjust the depth of the headrest. So we'll start first with the HR3 headrest, which has a fairly simple installation. It has a clamp that you slide onto the narrow part of the top of your Aeron, which works great, and then you kind of eyeball the center. And then the part I didn't really like quite as much is there's a nut that you have to tighten down in here, and it's kind of buried under there, so you really have to get down and find it, and it can take a while to get the Allen key to actually tighten it properly. Pretty quick and easy. It has this lever that tightens it, clamps it on there. So this is meant to be if you want to secure it and then quickly really loosen it to get it out of the way, say if you're sitting upright, as opposed to leaning back. And then it has these slides which move the headrest up and down. And so since I'm tall, really too tall for this headrest, it turns out, I'm going to secure it to its absolute highest position, both here and by angling it vertically, that will also put it in its highest position. Now it's worth noting that the way this functions mechanically, you have a trade-off between height and distance forward. So if you're like me and you don't have the best posture in the world always and you kind of want it more forward, in order to do that you have to sacrifice height of the headrest. So for me, I can't really compromise on height, so I'm going to secure it at the tallest position and kind of angle it so I think it'll hit my head nicely. Okay, so now I've got the Engineered Now HR4 headrest, which is the one that's meant for people who are a little taller, so I'm really excited to see how it works. So I'm just going to put it on there the same way I put the 3 on there. Alright, so that's tight enough. The mechanism is exactly the same. There's a lever here to kind of do a quick release if you really want it to be incredibly loose for adjusting. Again, both of these headrests I found, even on a tighter setting, you can move without releasing the quick release. Alright, so now I'm going to try out installing the Atlas headrest, which installs very similar to the 2 headrests from Engineered Now. You bring it from the right side to the left side, slide it towards the center. And one thing I like is that the mechanism for tightening it down is fully exposed. I can just see where the Allen key needs to go without any guesswork. So made the installation process just a little nicer. Not a big deal, but for me, it showed a level of design thinking that was a step above. Maybe Engineering Now is trying to hide the screw for aesthetics, but I'm looking at the back of this Aeron chair and it's covered in screws, so I don't think that it's a problem to have an exposed screw on a chair that's designed this way. Alright, so now I'm going to adjust the tensioner here so that I can hopefully get this to be tighter so that it won't be wobbling around and I actually lean my head back on it. So to do that, I have to say it's a little bit of a janky experience. You have to pop off these plastic caps, and they give you 2 extra caps, partly I'm guessing because it's almost impossible to do this without damaging them. You end up kind of cutting them a little bit because it's just a molded plastic. And they want you to use a screwdriver. I'm using a slightly sharper nail file because I found that was a little easier. So I exposed that one, and that's the tensioner for the headrest portion here, the upper part. And then this lower one is the tensioner for this angle adjustment. Alright, so now there are 2 different adjustment screws. This one is a Phillips, and this one is an Allen key. So I'm going to switch my screwdriver to a Phillips. So if you want to tighten this rotational mechanism, you need to tighten this Phillips screw. And I recommend using a wider Phillips screwdriver for this. It's really easy to strip these screws, so I don't know what I'd do if you stripped them too bad. So if you're really careful to make sure you really press into the screw properly while you're turning, and honestly it doesn't feel any different to me. I've already tightened it a bit, but it doesn't feel like I can really get it very tight. So let's try if there's anything on the other side to tighten. There is in fact a screw on the other side as well, and that one feels a little easier to tighten. I probably didn't tighten that one before. And let's see, how did that affect anything here? Maybe a little harder to rotate, but I guess if I had a mechanism to tighten a rotation like this, it'd be a lot more satisfying to me as a user if I could tighten it to the point where it would not move. So this headrest is a little different in terms of adjustment. It has an up and down adjustment, and it has, and for me I'm going to put it at the highest setting, and it has a forward and back adjustment, which has it's nice and tight. Like, it doesn't feel like it's going to be moving when I don't want it to be moving. So like the other headrests, the Atlas has some mechanisms for adjusting the tension on the two critical movements. One set of tensioners are these 4 Phillips screws, which adjust the tension of moving the headrest back and forth. I've adjusted these, and it makes the headrest feel very tight. I'm really happy with how much it seems to stay in place. The other tensioner adjusts the up and down motion, and again, it's an exposed Phillips screw on either side of the Atlas. Very easy to access, very elegant design. Okay, so now that I've tightened up this headrest, let's see if it's actually going to support my head properly. So I've just sat down, I've got it adjusted. Again, it just moves. Like, it just moves with my arms. I'm not really pulling that hard, and I have it what seems to be the tightest setting, which I don't find to be very satisfying. And you can probably hear that it's still kind of creaking. It doesn't feel like it's going to move, to be totally honest, but I mean, actually it just moved a little bit, and I'm not even really pushing on it too hard. Again, this might be an issue mostly because I've got a lot of leverage on it with my head up towards the top of it and it being extended to full height, but overall I think that the tensioners are not that effective on the device. Okay, so now that I've installed the HR04 headrest, I'm going to give it a try, see if it works a little better for my height. So, first thing I notice is when it's at the full extended height, it actually feels like maybe it's even too tall. I can bring it down maybe an inch and it feels like it hits my head a little better. It also feels more secure. I don't feel like I can torque it as much, probably because it was designed with that in mind. Leaning back, it's actually hitting my head really nicely. I really like what it's doing. I've got it at the highest setting and it's hitting me just a little below, just kind of at the top of my neck, but it feels really, really nice actually right there. It doesn't feel like it needs to be any higher. I feel that when I'm leaning back, probably I don't need this extended all the way out, which is nice. It's reassuring there's a little extra range of motion. But I do feel like having it at the maximum height is right for me. So overall, it really feels great. There's no creaking or wobbling, which I really like, partly because there's not a lever arm at the top that you can then press against with your head. It's got this nice, very sturdy feeling up and down bar, and then it's got this nice, sturdy back and forth motion of the headrest. So to me, it just feels like a better design. I don't think you need that lever design that the Engineered Now has. You need to have the thing go up and down. You need to have it go forward and back. And what they've done with the Atlas, which I really like, is there's a little pivot. So if you want to change the angle for your head, you can do that. But it's right at the end here, and it's separate from the mechanism that holds it vertical. So I think it's a better design. I'm very happy with it. You can see when I lean back, you can see my face. I'm kind of not feeling it because they're pushing off of my ears entirely. I mean, it's really, that thing just kind of creaked back. I thought I had it in a locked position. So, 2 complaints really. One, it obviously was pushing the headphones off my head, which is a total deal breaker for me. 2, and I found this to be the case over time, it's really not that secure. I mean, it feels like there's a bunch of stuff kind of creaking around. This thing kind of, you hear that? So trying them on here, when I lean back, it feels much better than the 3. Still not perfect, to be honest. I can hear a lot of sounds from the earphones, the headphones hitting the headrest while I move side to side. And it's a bit abrasive, the fabric, so I'm a little worried about the finish on my nice headphones. being hurt by the abrasive fabric. I don't think it's a deal breaker if you really like the style of this headrest and you're worried about headphones. I think it can work. These are also very large headphones, and with smaller headphones it's not an issue. Okay, so now it's time for the headphone test. So I've got my trusty cans here, and I lean back, and it touches the headphones a little bit. It does curve out to the sides a little bit, which is very comfortable. But you know, it doesn't bother me as much because it's a slippery pillow. I don't feel that it's abrasive against the headphones, and it's not really making as much noise because it's not plastic on plastic. It's like brushing plastic against a pillow. So overall, I think that the performance with headphones is the best of the three models. Okay, so after really evaluating these headrests, I used them each for a day solid. I still really believe that the Atlas is the best one for me. So just highlighting a couple of the points again. It's got the right plush pillow, which really feels nice against your head. I don't believe that this mesh fabric is the right thing to be putting against your bare skin or your hair. So I really like the padded pillow. It's got tensioners that really work. They really pin it down nicely, and they feel like they give me confidence it's not going to be sliding around. The design to me is much more logical. You don't have a big lever that your head can move back and forth. It's a rigid vertical structure. So I really prefer the mechanical engineering of this device. To be honest, after getting used to it, I actually prefer the aesthetics too. At first it's really tempting to look at these things and say, oh, I really need a mesh one, but you know, without it being perfect, it kind of looks not ideal. Whereas this one looks like it's deliberately different. I mean, it looks like what Herman Miller would have probably really made. If you look at some of their newer chairs, they're not committed to mesh when it doesn't make sense. And this headrest really makes a lot more design sense to me. And it really just looks right. Like it looks like it belongs on the chair to me. And now that I've had it for a few days, I really am very happy with it.